Okay, so the recording is on, so no more bad jokes. You're free now. Okay, so let's start with the sources on Lag BaOmer. We had the introduction before. Number one is the Gemara in Yevamot 62b. Rabbi Akiva said, Lamad Torah b'yalduto. If a person learned Torah when he was young, Yilmod Torah b'ziknuto. Don't think that is an exemption. Continue. Start again. Learn Torah in your old age. Haylo tamidim b'yalduto. If you had students, in your youth, Yilo tamidim ziknuso. Establish talmidim in your later years. Shenemar, as it says, Baboker Zara et zaracha, in the morning plant your seed, ube'erev lo tanach yadcha, and in the evening do not lift your hand away. Amru, it was stated, Shneim asar elef zugim talmidim, 12,000 pairs of students. Hayu lo Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva had, mi Givat ad Antifras, from these two areas, one to the other. The Kulan Meitu, Beperek Echad, and they all died during one time period, Nagu Kavod Ze Lazeh, because they did not act with honor, with respect, one to the other. All right, and that's certainly the simple understanding, and that's what the Medrash in source number 2 seems to very clearly indicate. This Shabbos, I spoke about this last week at the Sfardim, this Shabbos we're going to actually have a little bit of a class, more of a lunch and learn type of format in shul with some different sources, and we're going to hear a radically different approach to this Gemara. Vaya olam shamem, and the world was desolate. Ad sheba Rabbi Akiva eitzel Rabbeinu she bidarom, until Rabbi Akiva came to the rabbis, our rabbis who were in the Darom. So they were already Rabbeinu. They were already accomplished scholars. But Rabbi Akiva brought them to a whole different level. V'shana lahem, and he taught them. Who were they? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, and Velazar ben Shamoa. V'heim heim hamidu Torah ota shah. And it was they who reestablished the Torah at that time. Tana, we learned Kula meitu mi Pesach v'ad Atzeret. They all died during the time period from Pesach until Shavuot, the days of the Omer that we are presently in. Amar Rav Chama bar Abba v'Itamar Chaya bar Chia bar Avim kulam metu mita ra'ah. They all died a very, very difficult death. And what is that? Amar Rav Nachman askara, which is death by choking. So these were the Talmidim, right? These were the students of Rabbi Akiva. And, well, let's go a little further. The Medrash tells us that when Rabbi Akiva, number 2, when he assembled with his new students, Rabbi Akiva said to his new students, Banai, my children, Harishonim lo meita el shahaita eineim tsara elu le'ele. They died because they did not, their eyes were narrow. They did not look generously, how the English puts it, one to the other. Tenu da'atchem, pay attention, give your minds, focus. Shelo ta'asu k'ma'asehem, that you should not do like they had done. And as we'll discuss on Shabbos, what's really astounding is that they all died from this, right, when this was Rabbi Akiva's mantra. This is what Rabbi Akiva was all about. He was all about V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, loving your neighbor like yourself. Chavivin Adam, how dear is mankind, who was created in the Tselem Elokim. Right? So one could argue that because their Rebbe was so great, therefore they were supposed to have been imbued with that, and if they didn't integrate that into themselves up until the level that was demanded of them because their Rebbe was so great in this respect, therefore they were held responsible, but held to a standard far beyond what we are held to, and far beyond the way we would imagine their missteps to be. Yes, Steve.
I've always wondered, I mean, we hear this explanation, how could it be?
Yeah.
What was wrong? What was wrong with their,
Yeah.
with their education, with their hashkafa?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how
So
could it be?
again, on Shabbos, I'm going to be giving a radically different approach. Okay. But the simple understanding is lefi madregatam, which means according to their madrega, according to their level, and where they should have been, especially being Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, who was so exemplary in this, so therefore they fell short of that incredibly high bar. Right? That is the I would say that is the standard approach. Yeah.
That's demonstrated throughout Pirkei Avot, where so-and-so said, in the name of so-and-so, the student of so-and-so.
Yeah.
Very meticulously. It seems like it would be superfluous, but it isn't.
Correct. Yeah.
It's very deliberate.
Yeah.
It's to give the teacher credit as well as the student, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the transmission is very meticulous, and yes, and it's giving full credit. In number 3, Rav Aaron Kotler, he writes as follows: to explain why Rabbi Akiva's students died for a seemingly trivial sin. Right, one of the questions I'll be posing on Shabbos is: this is not something for which a person receives neither death down here in this world, capital punishment, or even heavenly punishment. Right? So he says, to explain why they died for this sin, perhaps we can say that Rabbi Akiva was the foundation of the redaction of the oral law. And his students were the ones who would pass on the oral law to future generations.
What is redaction?
So I would say, I'm not sure. Right?
I'm not sure
I'm not, right? And this is a translation. Right, I wish I'd have it in the Hebrew to see what he actually wrote, but I would venture to say, the clarification and the and bringing together all the different versions, strains of opinions, and crystallizing which is the tradition, the Masorah, as we. Which one is actually the Masorah, or which views, right, are within the bounds and which are not. That's what I would imagine it to be. And his students were the ones who would pass on the oral law to future generations. Therefore, they had to embody the perfection of all of the Mem Chet Dvarim, the 48 ways, the 48 traits through which Torah is acquired, also a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. For if they would lack even one of these traits, they would be lacking in the essence of the acquisition of the Torah, and they would not be able to transmit it in purity and holiness. If I'm lacking in my acquisition, I can only give over that which I have acquired. If they were lacking in this acquisition of Torah, then they cannot be the ones through whom the Torah would be passed to us, to all future generations. Therefore, apart from the fact that God is strict with the righteous to within a hair's breadth, right? God is very demanding when it comes to the righteous. It's compared if you have a 1978 Ford, right, and it has a couple of scratches on it, right? You're not going to be bothered by those scratches. If you have if you already have the 2019 BMW, right? If one place it's not shined to perfection, so that stands out. With the tzaddikim who have refined themselves to such a degree, a slight imperfection stands out. And the idea is that our time in this world is given to us to constantly improve ourselves, and therefore whatever level one is on, right? So if a person reaches high level, so all that's left are a few tweaks or a few imperfections, so that's what needs to be worked on. There's also this idea that since they were lacking in the quality of being close with one's fellow students, which is one of the 48 ways, their Torah would be fundamentally flawed. Therefore, they were not worthy of passing on the oral law to future generations. Another one of the questions that we'll be asking on Shabbos, and the whole shiur that I'll be giving over, I heard from Rabbi Shalom Gold, is, well, if they were unworthy, so then why do we have this mourning, this extended mourning for them? You know, tragically, Jewish history has no shortage of times that of individuals and times that we mourn. But the Chorban Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of both temples, is 21 days altogether when we look at the 3 weeks, starting Shabbat B'Tammuz and going until Tisha B'Av. So for the destruction of both temples, it's 21 days, and here it's 32, 33 days. Right? It seems to be a little bit strange. Furthermore, their disproportionate. Furthermore, their Torah learning was deficient because it was not completely pure, and the oral law had to be passed on as a complete Torah in every way. Therefore, they did not merit having the Torah passed on through them, but it was instead the rabbis from the south who merited this. Since the life of the sages is Torah, as Rambam writes, they were lacking in the essence of their existence, and that allowed for what happened. Okay. It's hard for us to imagine what it was like when Rabbi Akiva had a yeshiva of 24,000 students, and they all died within a short period of time.
To think about it, you know, some of the universities now these days, a campus of a university could have
Right, 24,000 students, correct. And to think of them all dying, right, and the way that Rabbi Akiva responded to this tragedy, and the way that he resuscitated the Torah and the Torah learning after this loss, that is what imbues this day of Lag BaOmer with its holiness and with its joy. There's always tragedy. There's always things for which we mourn and things that we lose. The real question is, what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we utilize those experiences, and how do we go on from those experiences? And that really is the crux over here. Number 4. Rabbi Akiva was the greatest sage of his generation. It was said that he was the shoresh, the source of Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral tradition. The line of transmission of the Torah from Sinai to future generations ran through him and his students. When his 24,000 students were decimated, it caused a major depression. How would the chain continue? Who would provide the light of Torah to future generations? How could they ever be replaced? How could a grieving people on the run from Roman persecution be consoled for the loss of so many great men, so crucial to the spiritual survival of the nation? And this is a very important point that Rabbi Wein, in his different history series, makes often. You know, we would think that all of these great sages, that they were sitting in their crystal tower, receiving their university housing and their stipends, and had nothing more to do with their time than engage in their studies and in their discovery and in their understandings and their perceptions and in their depth. And of course, the truth could be nothing further than that. They were literally on the run from the Romans, being persecuted with decree after decree, and trying to get those decrees rescinded. and not being able to study Torah, and the study of Torah being outlawed. Rabbi Akiva ultimately was tortured to death by the Romans, literally tortured to death, not an expression. His death was a torturous death of the Romans combing his body with combs of steel, flaying the flesh off of his body because he dared to go against their prohibition of teaching Torah. And he would convene large groups and teach Torah to them. So that was the climate wherein these sages were operating, were functioning. How could a grieving people on the run from Roman persecution be consoled for the loss of so many great men so crucial to the spiritual survival of the nation? The urge to say, it's all over, throw in the towel, as we say, must have been overwhelming. The less faithful and more pessimistic among them must have been ready to give up. Rabbi Akiva recovered from his devastating loss to transmit the Torah through a new group of 5 students. It was on Lag BaOmer that Rabbi Akiva began teaching Torah to these new Talmidim. On Lag BaOmer, he started teaching Torah to these new Talmidim. The seeds he planted that day, which ultimately produced the massive rejuvenation of Torah, are the reasons for celebrating on Lag BaOmer. So it was the replanting, that dedication towards the future, that optimism and hope and perseverance that began today, that is the reason, or one of the reasons of celebrating on Lag BaOmer. On this day we commemorate the renewal, we celebrate the determination, we cheer the cessation of the plague, and we foresee the future bright with hope and determinations. As the centuries pass, as the Romans of every period seek our destruction and annihilation, we look to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai for inspiration. We know how they looked the enemy in the face and persevered, thus ensuring that our nation and our Torah are alive and flourishing to this very day. In the wake of a tragedy that would have felled lesser people, Rabbi Akiva strengthened himself and set about ensuring that the chain remains unbroken. So this was the day of the renewal, when Rabbi Akiva, in the face of that absolute depression of all that he had worked to build being decimated, he kept on going. Now, another aspect is that this today is the yahrzeit, the day of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was the greatest scholar of the Kabbalah, of the mysticism that we ever had. Famously, the Gemara Shabbos, not surprising, on Daf Lamed Gimel, on Daf 33, Lag BaOmer, on Daf Lamed Gimel tells us the story how he had to hide from the Romans for 13 years in a cave where he studied Torah with his son. He died on Lag BaOmer and revealed many of the deepest ideas of the Kabbalah to his students. They recorded his teachings in what is known as the Zohar. Zohar means light, glow, right? That's what the Zohar, the word Zohar means. So in the Zohar, on Devarim Parshat Azinu, it tells, Oto Yom Bikesh Rishon Ben Yochai Lihistalek Min HaOlam. On the day that he was going to be leaving this world, Vayem Mesader Devarav. He was organizing his matters. Nitkansu Chavir Leveito. His friends entered the house, and he said to them, Ata Sha'at Ratzon Hi. Now it is a time of heavenly willingness. Milim Kedoshot, holy words, holy teaching. Shelo Giliti Arata, that I've never revealed until now. Ritzoni Legalotan, I want to now reveal them. Kol hau yoma lo afsik esha min beita. That whole day there was a fire of holiness, of purity in his house. V'lo aviman demate legabe, and there was no one able to approach him. D'lo yachilu d'nahora v'asha havi b'sucharnei. They were unable to because this fire was around him. V'asa havi lahit kamei shamu kala olu v'atu v'kanshu lehilula t'vei Rabbi Shimon. After he passed away, they came to bury him. The fire flew into the air and danced before him. A voice was heard from heaven saying, "Come and gather annually for the Hilula," right, which is an anniversary, but Hilula is a lashon of Hallel, praise, right, song. Hilula of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Okay? Now, of course, of the 5 students that we mentioned, one of them was Rabbi Shimon. Which Rabbi Shimon? That was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So, we have this continuation, this Rabbi Akiva continuing on Lag BaOmer, and one of those 5 students was Shimon bar Yochai, and his yahrzeit, his Hilula, being on that day when Rabbi Akiva started teaching him and the 4 others. So by celebrating Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's contribution to the Torah, right, we're also celebrating the continuity of Torah that came about through the perseverance of Rabbi Akiva after that, the terrible deaths of his students. Source number 6, Rabbi Chaim Vital. Rabbi Chaim Vital was the main student of the Arizal, also known as the Ari HaKodesh, right, who was one of the greatest Kabbalists in the city of Tzfat. They say that the Ari's writings were unintelligible. It was just written on a level that one couldn't make heads or tails of what he was saying. As Rav Chaim Vital, his student, who broke it down to a point where it was able to be transmitted and understood and passed on to others. See, he writes, "Hatam shasimchi hi al otam hatalmidim shahosid achar Akiva shelo metu," right? Ke'elu, right? The reason for the rejoicing is for the students that he had afterwards, who did not die like the original ones. The katafti kol zeh lohorot, and I wrote all this to show ki yesh shoresh b'minhag hazeh, that there is a basis for this custom, hanizka, that we mentioned, right, which is to go to Meiron and celebrate on Lag BaOmer. Shimon Yochai is buried in the northern town, not much of a city, the northern town of Meiron, on the top of a mountain there in Meiron. And I did this one of the years when I was living in Israel. There are buses that go non-stop from Yerushalayim. You buy a ticket, not for a particular bus. You buy a ticket, you buy a round-trip ticket to Meron. You have 2 tickets. And the bus comes, fills up, and starts its trek northward. And the next bus pulls up, fills up, and goes. You get to Meron, you get out, you spend as much time as you like there. You go back to the bus area, and the buses once again, right, fill up, travel, fill up, travel. And you have, I think I saw in the news today, I forgot how many 100,000 they said were in Meron. But it is quite the celebration. So he writes that there is a basis for this minhag to go to Meron on Lag BaOmer, ubefrat, and particularly Shimon Yochai, who mehei tamidav gedol Rabbi Akiva. He was one of those 5 great students of Rabbi Akiva. V'lachein zman simchato, and therefore his time of happiness is on Lag BaOmer. Right, all the other tamidim died. The other tamidim died. Right, and he then he wasn't. I believe he became a talmid afterwards, and these talmidim passed on the Torah to us. Now, see if I included this. I didn't include this. But very interesting. The Chasam Sofer writes, on the 33rd day following the exodus from Egypt, that's when the food provisions ran out. And that's when the manna, started to fall from the heavens. He writes, it says in the Medrash that began, right, which ends up being on Lag Ba'omer, right? Now, of course, Shimei Yochai lived in this cave for 13 years and was miraculously sustained in a manna-like fashion. The Gemara says there was a stream of water which they got there, the water they needed, and there was a carob tree. And that's what sustained them in this man-like existence. Yeah. Okay. Let's see the Toldot HaArizal over here. Again, from the Arizal. In the days of our master, Rav Yosef Karo. Rav Yosef Karo, of course, is the author of the Shulchan Aruch. The Code of Jewish Law is Rav Yosef Karo. Hiskimu shlo yasu Yisrael harviyem mechol b'lag ba'omer al Tzion Moshe ben Yochai. Right? They said that the Jews should not make a big dance celebration. Right? There are many who look at it and say that's not the proper respect, dignity, right, at the grave of such a holy person, with all the dancing and the singing. V'nir l'marana beitin shehu zilzul. They viewed it as degrading, disregard, that they're ochlim, having barbecues, umaraktim, and they're dancing. V'nichtava v'lo nechtama. This decision had been written, but was not implemented. B'layla, that night, Chalam Maran, Rav Yosef Karo, had a dream. Im Shimei Yochai, and in the dream came to him of Shimei Yochai. V'amar lai, and he said to him, Shetavo ma'geif agadola bavur zu haskama, that a terrible plague would come if they would, because of this decision. Ki ritzono sheyisamchu b'hilula. It's his wish that they do celebrate on the anniversary of his death. Ulamachar karat haskama, and therefore they tore up the decision, and it was never implemented. And as I said, to this day, hundreds of thousands of people go there on this night. Right? And we have the bonfires, and we also give food to all those who are in need. I saw something very a fascinating idea. I'm going to speak about a little bit more on Shabbos this week. Fire. You have a piece of wood, and it seems to be a piece of wood. You light it on fire, and you recognize there's all of this power, all of this energy, all of this illumination that is in there, but it is hidden. Rosh Yochai was Kabbalah. Kabbalah is seeing the inner light, the inner energy, the inner power in all that seems to be regular and mundane. Interesting thought. The Bar Tanura, right? When we learn Mishnayot, just Mishnayot, one of the main, probably the main, like sort of the Rashi, like you have a Rashi on Chumash and Rashi on Gemara. On Mishnah, the main interpreter, the main commentator you have is the Bar Tanura.
Did they name the wine after him?
Huh? Yeah. B'yom Yichet B'Iyar, he writes, on the 18th day of Iyar, Yom Mitato Shemir Yochai, the anniversary of the death of Shemir Yochai, Ba'im Mikol HaSevivot, they come from all around. Umalikan Le'avu Kol Gadol, and they light large torches, bonfires. Milvad Mash Malikan Aleh Ner Tamid. Right? Besides, of course, lighting the Ner Tamid, right? The regular candles, a yard site candle that we normally light on a yard site. Right? When it comes to his yard site, right, we go exponential over there. Right? And it's not a yard site candle, it is this massive bonfire. Shabei Akron Nifkadu, V'cholim Nitrapu, B'neder U'Munadava, Shinadvu L'makom Ahu. Right? Many people, right, who were hoping for children, right, many people who were hoping for a healing, right, they came there, they prayed there, they pledged actions, mitzvot, they pledged tzedakah, whatever it was. Right, this is what the Bartanua writing. Lastly, let's look at Rav Aaron Kotler, who we had quoted above when he was speaking about the students who died and them being the proper transmitters. Kedai gam litbonem meidach gisa. Also look at it from the other perspective. Begodel hazuchut shorteno hadarom. Instead of focusing on the lacking of the original students, let's look at the merit of those 5 Rabbanim of the South. Da Torah shaita ru'uli neser ayidei chav dalet elv tamidei Rabbi Akiva, that the Torah that should have flowed through the 24,000 students, nimsura ayidei chamisha talmidim elu. It instead flowed through these 5 students. Now, realize that Aaron Kotler was part of that Torah generation that was annihilated in Europe. And he came to the United States and he founded his Lakewood Yeshiva, planning on rebuilding that which was lost from Europe. And the America that he came to then was not the America we live in today. Right? The America we live in today is, thanks to him and others, filled with different yeshivot of all different stripes. But when he was founding the Lakewood Yeshiva, now has thousands of boys who are learning at the yeshiva. But when he was founding it, it was very, very bleak, a very, very desolate landscape of Torah here in the United States. Amongst the yeshivas, Lakewood was the one which was firmest in Torah and Torah and Torah and Torah only. You had a yeshiva university, which by virtue of its name clearly felt that there should be the secular studies together with the learning. You had a Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, which didn't have classes given at the yeshiva, but arranged, facilitated the boys to go 2 nights a week. I went to Towson State. Others went to Hopkins or University of Maryland. That they arranged that, and there was a full spectrum. But Lakewood was sort of at the edge of that spectrum, and saying we have to rebuild, we have to rebuild, we have to rebuild, and we don't dilute it in any way. And he's speaking here about the 24,000 Talmidim who died, and how Torah was transmitted through the 5. Right? I think it's pretty clear, this echo that we hear of those that were destroyed in Europe, like the 24,000, and the handful that remained afterwards. V'chein hu lefi erech godel zechutam shel amalei Torah b'doreinu. And so too is it with the tremendous reward and value of those who toil in Torah in our generation. Shehu b'vichinat vaya olam shamein. Right? Because this is, without them, right? So he says, without them the world would be desolate. I don't know if I would explain it that way. Shehu b'vichinat, this is in the category of, how I understand it, vaya olam shamein. The world was desolate. Right? I think he's saying nice. He's not saying without them the world would be desolate. The world is in a state of desolation after the Churban, the destruction of Europe. V'ayidei yechidim, and it's through these individuals, hasuridim, the remnants, asher Hashem korei, who God calls to or who hear God's call, ha'oskin b'Torah, and they are involved in Torah, ein ha'Torah mishtakachat me Yisrael. The Torah will not be forgotten from Yisrael. On this end, I heard a very, very beautiful talk from Rav Yaakov Galinsky when I was in Israel years and years ago. And he said that, I believe he said that he once said to the Panavizha Rav, the Panavizha Rav, Rav Kahanaman, was another such person who dreamt, who came to Israel from war-torn Europe and said, I'm going to build a yeshiva with thousands of students on the top of that mountain. It was a sand dune over there. And this visionary in the end did build the Panovich yeshiva there. So he once said to the Panovich Rav, our generation is greater than the generation of Chazal, of the sages. How can you say that? Well, there they give a very clear mathematical formula. They say of the 1,000 who start to learn Chumash, 100 start to learn Mishnah. And of the 100 who learn Mishnah, 10 learn Talmud. And of the 10 who learn Talmud, 1 reaches the level of Horah, of issuing halachic decisions. And in our generation, he said, a lot more than of the 1,000 who learn Chumash, a lot more than 100 get to Mishnah. And of those who get to Mishnah, a lot more than 10% get to Gemara. So we're ahead. We're doing better. We're greater. Our generation is greater than the generation of the sages. Then he explained with a mashal, with a parable. They prepared a wedding. They were expecting 700 guests. And the food's all cooked, all ready to go out. And then, as is happening this year, there's a flash snowstorm. Even though it was the end of April, whenever it was happening in New York this week, or last week. There's this flash snowstorm. And no one can get to the wedding. So instead of 700 guests, there's 50, 60 people there. So what happens? The food's already all cooked. What are they going to do with it? The waiters come out with these trays filled with food saying, eat, 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 eat. Have as much as you want. Have as much as you want. And he explained, in the time of the sages in that generation, 1,000 out of 1,000 came. So of those 1,000, 100 learned, of the 1,000 learning Chumash, Torah, Bible, 100 made it to Mishnah, and 10 made it to Gemara. But in our generation, instead of 1,000 showing up, 50, 60, 70 show up. So the heavenly waiters come with their trays filled with siyata dishmaya, filled with this inspiration, with this energy, with this drive, with this help to succeed, and say to them, eat, eat, eat. So of all those who come to study, they're able to make great strides in their studies. That's what Rav Aaron, that's how Raman Katar was saying, that of these 5 Talmidim, look what came of those 5. And look what came from those who persevered after Europe. Yes, Chaim.
I wasn't sure of the symbol of the wood and the burning. and you used the word, well, all these sages reignited Torah.
Yeah.
And so is the wood, the burning, of course, I don't know any other holiday we do that. Hanukkah's a little light. Is that the symbol of refueling the energy, the
That's
light
right.
of Torah?
You're presenting a beautiful idea. That's not what I said.
Oh, 'cause
I don't want to
quite
take credit for
understand
something that I didn't say.
No, it's
Right?
I
But
just-
that's a beautiful idea. That's a beautiful idea. That
Then
there was,
what is the
what I
where
was
does it
saying is
come
that
from?
Kabbalah lets us see that beneath the surface there's all of this illumination, all of this clarity, all of this energy, all of this power. And when we take a piece of wood and we burn it,
Yeah.
right? So we see that, oh, it was a piece of wood. And now look at all the energy, look at all the light
Yeah.
that's coming out of it. So too, everything. When we look beneath the surface, there is this energy, this potential, this light from everything, every situation, every person that we can gain.
So the reason that the burning of the wood is a symbol of Lag BaOmer and Shimon ben Yochai is a Kabbalistic. I just want to clarify for
think
myself,
so.
maybe others,
Yeah.
clarify a Kabbalistic idea that illumination, there's more illumination than we realize.
Yes, yes.
And
Right.
these
And-
sages
and-
recognize the illumination.
Correct.
They-
And so on a simple level, right, we light a yahrzeit candle for a person's neshama soul, or Shimba, right, and that represents the person's soul. For Shimba Yochai, it's not a little light. It's a raging bonfire.
It has to be raging because
Yeah.
it's Torah.
Yeah.
It's not just a spark.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
It's not a spark. Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you
my
very
friends.
much.
We'll call it
Really
over
good.
here. Yasher koach, everybody.
Good. Thank you so much.
So why they make a big fuss about barbecue and
The barbecue's not the main thing.